I was serving on a jury when I watched a man openly admit to setting a fire in court and still walk out a free man. The confidence he carried was unreal, almost unsettling. The defendant, a quiet farmer named Daniel Harper, was charged with burning down his own barn just a week earlier. Prosecutors painted a careful picture. Days before the fire, Daniel had been seen removing every valuable item from the structure. He even cut the surrounding hay in a wide circle, about 50 yards out, clearly preventing flames from spreading. On the day of the fire, a neighbor watched Daniel calmly circle the barn, pouring liquid from a blue fuel can along the base of the walls. Less than a minute later, the entire building erupted. The neighbor, Mark Collins, immediately called 911 and reported what he'd seen. Firefighters arrived fast, but the barn was already a total loss. They smelled diesel, confirmed arson, and arrested Daniel on the spot. Daniel said nothing, refused to speak to investigators or the district attorney, and asked for a lawyer at trial. The prosecution confidently argued motive. The barn was insured, so they claimed it was a clear case of insurance fraud. They called witness after witness. Mark testified. Firefighters described the smell of fuel. The 911 call was played. The defense attorney, a calm man named Richard Lowe, barely lifted a finger. 40 minutes later, the prosecution rested, convinced the case was airtight. Then the defense finally stood. Richard called Daniel to the stand and immediately asked, bluntly, if he burned the barn down. Daniel said yes, no hesitation. He explained the barn was rotten, infested with termites, and unsafe. It needed to come down. Richard asked if burning old structures was something he'd done before. Daniel said it was common practice on his farm, something his father had always done. Richard then asked about permits. Daniel calmly explained his farm sat in an active agricultural zone, legally exempt from burn permits. That's when I glanced at the prosecution. Their confidence vanished. But Richard wasn't finished. He asked why Daniel hadn't told police any of this. Daniel explained he'd been arrested first, warned to stay silent, accused of fraud, and terrified by what he heard. So he listened. When asked if he ever filed an insurance claim, Daniel said no. The barn was worthless, and everything inside had already been moved. The prosecutor buried his face in his hands. Finally, Richard asked why Daniel even wanted a trial. Daniel said the arrest ruined his reputation. Newspapers called him a criminal. He wanted the truth heard publicly. The defense rested. 20 minutes later, the charges were dropped.